You'd think that I could figure this out. Okay. I'll put it on you. Since Ken insisted.
Something smells good. Small fire going on.
So I have to go to this wedding shower today for this friend of mine.
Oh.
It's really funny because she has no idea. It's going to be a surprise, and she really has no idea. Just the other day, she came over and she said, "Well, what are you going to do this weekend?" I said, "Well, Ken's grandmother's coming, and I'll just be around here." She said, "Well, maybe I'll stop by." And I was like, "Okay." You want? So, it's great when people don't know.
How are you going to get her to...
Well, I think her husband-to-be is going to drive her over to... It's just up the road.
Oh.
And is going to drive her over to their house to see their baby, or I don't know, something, to the people that it's at this one friend of mine's house. Yeah.
Oh.
So she just thinks she's going over there or something to see this baby. So it should be funny.
We had a long lane to walk down to catch the bus. And the bus was horse-drawn bus.
Oh yeah.
It had roll-up side curtains on the sides that you could roll up to, in the summertime. In the wintertime, you wanted them down. And,
How many people would fit on that?
oh, I really don't remember how many people. It wasn't, anything like a bus that they have now.
Mm-hmm.
I would say maybe a dozen, maybe not many more. I really don't know. But in the wintertime, my mother fixed. We had these foot warmers that you could heat a brick of charcoal or whatever it was. I think, whatever. Anyhow, they heated in the coals of the.
Like a stone.
And there was a little drawer to slip that in, and that. And you could put your feet on it to keep warm. And boy, that was really great because it took the horse-drawn school bus making the stops and all. Yeah. And I don't suppose it was more than 5 miles to school. But that was interesting. Of course, my brother, I suppose he was about like in 5th grade, and changing schools and all would affect him more. Of course, I don't remember how he felt about things. Yeah, and my sister was, really a baby. So, anyhow, that was my start in school. And I went to that school. Everything was in the same building from 1st grade through 12th. But you practically knew everybody in the community. Knew the people, parents of all the kids from 1st grade through 12th.
Yeah.
Really, to me, it was, a lot friendlier than in the bigger schools like in Waterloo. There, the teachers all knew each other, and some of them lived together there. Of course, there weren't too many teachers. Each teacher had 2 grades. And in high school, I think we had 3 teachers for 9th through 12th grade.
And what was the name of that town?
The name of the town was Sulphur Springs.
Sulphur Springs.
Yeah.
That's where you grew up near, mostly?
Well, yeah, out in the country from there.
Mm-hmm.
But our hometown was really Newell.
Right.
That was where the Danish church was that we went to, and our relatives lived closer. Well, one uncle lived in Newell, and his sister was out on a farm. And I don't know when her husband died, I guess when when the children, they had 5 children, and they died. And I guess he had asked, like this Uncle Pete that lived with us, if he would, evidently he, left my dad. My dad was running a farm by himself then, and he promised his sister that he would run the farm for them until, that her children were growing up to take over. So he stayed there and run the farm, but and he finally got married, and he wasn't a young man by any means, but anyhow, he did get married. And, well, I remember going to their 25th wedding anniversary, but of course they never had any children, so anyhow, we stayed on that farm. I don't remember how old I was, but we did move from it to a place about 2 miles away. It had a lot nicer house and all, and I don't know really what the reason was for moving, but I don't think we were there more than a year or 2 at the most. And then we came back to this same farm we started out on. Maybe the soil was better, I don't really know.
How big of a place was that? I mean, how many acres?
Well, I suppose we had 160 acres. That was about the average size for a family farm then. All the work was done with horses until, well, my dad finally had a tractor, and we got one of the first corn pickers that was anywhere around the area. So that was really something. Before that, we always had vacations from school for a couple of weeks when it was corn husking weather, so everybody could help pick corn. Team and wagon went up and down the rows and walked along, and pulled off the ears, and had a bang board on the one side of the wagon, and throw the ears up against it, and then fall down in the wagon. Then you haul it home and have an elevator to run by horses, of course, and hoist it into the corn crib and store it. So things were really, really different. Of course, we had hogs and chickens and cattle, and did our own butchering. We had beef and pork and chickens, and then my dad got into having purebred stock, purebred hogs, and then he had purebred chickens, and would sell, well, even hatched chicks and sold. We had 2 good-sized incubators in our little basement that we had, and it's heated with kerosene lamps, I guess. We didn't have electricity. But anyhow, my mother hatched out a lot of chickens that she sold.
Do you remember what kind they were? Or
well, white Wyandottes.
White Wyandottes?
White Wyandottes.
Like meat birds?
That's the main chicken I can remember. Yeah. So that was, extra money, and went to all the fairs and took prizes on whatever they took, My dad would take corn and different kinds of grain, and sometimes you fix up a booth of your own things, and other times, they'd just be things laid out on tables. So they made extra money that way, and my dad raised oats for seed company. So that had to be perfect. So I can remember walking up and down through the oat field looking for a stray weed, because, if they found any, then they wouldn't accept it. And of course, the price was much better for that than just for ordinary rice. So then this landlord we had, he was a graduate of Iowa State University and very much interested in development of agriculture. And he had, I don't know how many farms his father had, but anyhow, he got my dad started to develop raising soybeans, which were nobody raised at that time. And also, my dad started developing hybrid corn. And he was just in the middle of that, you know, when he passed away. He could have, I'm sure he would have been a wealthy farmer if he could have gone ahead and developed that, because that was really something new. And soybeans, too, it was just the beginning of it. Of course, there was nobody to take over. My brother had a good job in Chicago, and, you know, he couldn't afford to give that up and come back to the farm as long as we just rented the farm. So anyhow, he got.
What year was that he died?
1930, right before Christmas, which was always, you know, sad. Brings memory back when it comes Christmas time. But my brother got of course, I had started going to Ames, you know, to school. And I went there, they had quarters then, and I went that first quarter. Well, then it was over at Christmas time, so I got a call that I should come to Sioux City rather than you know, home to the farm, because my dad was in the hospital in Sioux City. And of course, I had an aunt and uncle that lived there, so of course my mother was staying with them. So I took the train to Sioux City, and they had taken my father to the Sioux City Hospital from Newell, where we lived. The doctor had been out to the farm, you know, and gave him pills or something, and all of a sudden decided he had I suppose he suspected appendicitis or what have you. So then they took him by car. I suppose it was 75 miles to Sioux City to the hospital, but the appendix had ruptured on the way, and of course they operated, and gangrene set in, and they tried putting in tubes to drain it out. That's all they could do, and of course they didn't have any antibiotics, that sort of thing then. So that's what killed him. He was 50 years old when he died. So that was pretty hard on my mother, you know, because she'd been a housewife, and that was her life. So anyhow, she had to sell out all the farm equipment and everything, and she moved. I didn't go back to school that winter quarter. Then I stayed home. You know, I didn't know what I was going to be doing, but anyhow, I stayed home and helped and got everything ready for the sale. My mother kept just enough furniture, you know, that she could maybe put in an apartment and cooking supplies and that sort of thing. But so then after the sale, of course, I went with my mother to Sioux City to my aunt's, and my sister stayed with a farm neighbor there to finish out the school year. She was, I suppose, in high school then, or maybe 8th grade, I don't remember. But, and of course my brother went back to his job in Chicago. So then I stayed at my aunt's place till the spring quarter started. And then my aunt said, well, how much would I need to go back, you know, to school? And I said, well, probably $200. Well, I had a kind of a scholarship. I got that before I started down there. And the tuition was $32 a quarter. And this tuition was $20 a quarter. So my outlay was $12 a quarter for tuition. And of course I had books to buy, but they weren't terribly expensive at that time. So then I went back, and I moved into a cooperative dormitory where we did our own girls, of course it was strictly girls, did our own cooking and some of the cleaning. And I think our cost was like $250 a week. That was board and room. So that was
How old were you then?
quite different. Well, that was my, my first year of college.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, anyhow, that was quite an experience. But I really enjoyed that time I was in the cooperative dormitory because I really learned a lot about preparing foods more than I learned in some of the classes, you might say. And that came in handy when I had to take charge of potluck lunch programs when I was teaching, large quantity. So, anyhow, well, I better rest a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. You probably don't want to go on for forever, I guess, talking, but whenever you want to speed up or cut down, okay.
Do you want a,
So,
Yeah, I wish I would have went to that family reunion. It's like one of those things you just don't think about it at the time. It's a once in a lifetime thing,
I was so pleased that I got, because I just didn't hardly dare think about it because I had all this sinus problem, and was going to Iowa City going, and I had this appointment right the day before we would, or maybe we were even going to leave. I think we were going to leave that day if I could go, So I came home from Iowa City, and here the doctor ordered me to use this saline in my nose, through my nose, a couple times a day, I guess at least, or 3 times a day, I guess, to start with. And it was to be warm, not hot, but just warm. And I had a little syringe to spurt it up my nose, and one side and then the other, so many times. And of course, I said to Diane, I guess, came after me, or took me to Iowa City and, brought me back. And I said, well, we better try to find, I never thought about asking the doctor anything about it. He gave me one sample jar to start out with, like about a quart size. But I said, well, I'd have to get enough to last the weekend. Of course, he told me how I could fix it myself, boil water and add so much salt and then keep it in the refrigerator, which was, if I'd known that it was, I thought it'd be simple to buy it. So we went to Drug Town, which, a big drug chain. No, they didn't have such a, of course I thought it would be right on the shelf, but didn't find any, and then we asked the pharmacist there, and he said, well, maybe he had one bottle of some kind, and I don't know, he said it was $6, I don't know, $6 maybe, or what have you, but that wasn't going to be enough, so I said, well, and I want a wristwatch. It was this size of a wristwatch. Of course, not many kids had wristwatches in that day, so that was wonderful. It was a good kind of watch to have when I went to school. It had engraved on the back, presented by Fairwell. And then, when I was a senior, they had this contest. The Anti-Saloon League was having a convention in Detroit. And they had this quiz book that they were going to have a contest. And they said schools, and, anybody could enter that wanted to, and study this book all about prohibition and alcohol and what have you. So I took I can't remember how many, weren't many, in our school that took part. Anyhow, I got the highest rating, so then I went to the county and took the exam there, and I got the highest mark there. So then the next thing was this trip to Detroit to And of course, all expenses paid. Go by train, you know, all the way to Detroit. And well, we met in Des Moines, and I think we had a day in Des Moines and stuff. Stayed in a hotel there, and then we were just, anyhow, we were to start out for Detroit. And we had a sleeping car. Of course, I'd never been on a sleeping car. And so, anyhow, we must start out in the evening or close to, because we'd never seen the Mississippi River, and we were going to stay awake till we saw the Mississippi River, which we did. Kids, yeah. Well, I was in high school, you know, I wasn't a little kid. But anyhow, when we got to Detroit, we stayed in a big hotel, which was an experience. Then, of course, we had to go to some of the meetings of this Anti-Saloon League. And of course, there was kids came from all over Iowa. I don't remember how many we were, probably 35 or maybe even a few more. But so we had some crepe paper costumes that had been made, and it resembled an ear of corn. We had a cap, you know, that stood up just like it was the ear of corn with the leaves kind of out, and then kind of a collar around the green, and then a long cape, or yellow, you know, like corn. They were real clever costumes. The boys had a little different costume, but it was still, you know, representing Iowa corn. And we put on some little skip, you know, we had those costumes on. Now we got to go to these banquets where they have finger bowls and all this silver stuff that never used before. And of course, sleep in the hotel, which was new. And then we took a trip across to Canada, which was great, and to the Ford company. And of course, they had airplanes, and they said if we would send a telegram home and find out, you know, get permission, we could go on a airplane ride. I think maybe it cost $5 or something, but anyhow, folks lived out in the country, you know. I don't know how it would work sending a telegram, but anyhow, I did try that, so.
Oh.
But anyhow, of course, when I got back, I had to write an article for the local paper. Newell had a Newell Mirror, and so got several columns in the paper about this trip. So that was really an experience. When I graduated, I think I had the same grade. They graded by numbers then, and I think one was exactly the same as my brother's when he graduated. I had 96 and 4/10 for the 4 years in high school. So I had the valedictorian talk to give. I really planned to go to Iowa City to school because my brother, you know, had graduated from there, and I was going there, and I was going to major in math because I always liked math so well. And then our superintendent there at the school, he was married and had 2 little kids, and he and his wife wanted to go to summer school in Iowa City, and he asked me if I'd like to come live with them and take care of the kids while they went to school. And I thought, well, that'd be great. And my brother, he had already arranged if I could get a job to help earn my way in the fall, and everything was all set. Well, the last day of school, they had a big picnic, which was common, and the superintendent play ball with the kids. And he didn't break his leg. So that was the end of his going to Iowa City to school, and that was the end of me going to work for him. But anyhow, that summer, my mother and I and another girl, we went to Ames to 4-H, state 4-H convention. And, of course, looked all around the campus and all, and finally decided to go and talk to some kind of a counselor at all about school, and because of that I decided to go to Iowa State. So it's funny how one incident changes your life. I mean, it would have been changed completely, you know. But and then it was funny because, of course, a regular math course wasn't. I mean, I didn't have to take any special math for home education. You could take it, you know, but it just never worked into my schedule because when I went back after that first year, I had a job living with a professor and his family, you know, helping do a little housework and cooking and what have you, close to the campus. And I walked to school, so. Anyhow, I worked there, and then to make up that winter quarter that I lost out, I went to summer school, and then I had a job downtown Ames, working for another college professor and 2 little children, and walked out to college along the railroad track. They had a cinder path, and of course that morning, I think my first class was like 7 o'clock in the morning. It was probably a good 2 miles or more out to the campus. But I walked. I couldn't afford a nickel for the bus. You just can't, you know, it's so hard to realize the difference. Now it's hard for me to pay a price for something, you know, because I think, oh, I only paid 1/10 of that, you know, way back. I just can't get it into my head, you know, that there's more money now than there was then. So, you know, so I worked there the summer, and I guess I stayed on then the next much. Anyhow, through my junior year. Well, in the senior year, I had to have practice teaching 1 quarter, and we had to live in they had big houses where we lived and did all the work, you know, planning the meals and taking care of the house, and we even had a baby to take care of borrowed from the nursery or whatever. They had nursery school there too. But that was an experience. So I couldn't really work that last year. And then I did join a sorority, which in a way did me some good because, you know, extra activities were important, you know, when it come to applying for a job. You know, what did you do besides, you know, other things? So I took part in different organizations and things, so I had that for my resume, and the house where we lived wasn't very far from the campus, so of course I walked. And when I went to my practice teaching, I did it at Story City, which was just about 15 miles from Ames. And the instructor that I had, she drove back and forth, and there was another girl and I were the only ones that went for practice teaching. So we got a good half days teaching experience. So they had different classes, like one class maybe was taking sewing, the other one was taking home furnishing, or what have you. So we both got to teach the whole half day while we were there. Otherwise, if they had a lot of students, they'd probably divide up. They didn't. But back then, there were a lot of empty dormitories, and there was no problem getting into school, and no problem getting the courses you wanted. In fact, with working and all, my schedule got kind of mixed up. That was one reason I didn't get any math worked in, because it always came at the wrong time. But I forgot what I was saying. Anyhow.
You want any more hot water?
Well, I will maybe, but I might as well
Okay.
drink some more of this. Or it's cold, and I like it hot.
Now they can't even get some students to walk up the hill to, the university acquired all this land and buildings.
Oh, yeah.
It used to be a mental health center, and they just have the hardest. It's, I don't know, maybe. I mean, it's just like really the closest point to the campus is probably less than a quarter mile.
Yeah.
But they just can't get people to walk up there, and nobody wants anything to do with it because it's so far away, But we. I'm involved with a group that is starting to show films up there, and we have these dance concerts and stuff.
Yeah.
People come up for that once in a while, but you can just tell it's just far out. It's like, well, they'd have to put a bus in. And
Of course, the short time I lived at this, well, I guess I joined it when I was a junior, but I couldn't afford to live in the house, so. Anyhow, but one girl had a car, which was really something in that day and age. So, some of us get a ride now and then. But it happened, let's see, it was just, my sister came for my college graduation. My mother was still in Sioux City. I can't remember if she must have gone back to Sioux City, or my mother couldn't come. But and these people that I worked for before I went to the sorting house, the World's Fair was on in Chicago then, and the mother wanted to go to the World's Fair. And so they asked me if I would want to stay with the children. Of course, the professor, he was, teaching summer school. So it just worked out right that I could stay there and take care of the children. And then it was time for this lady to come home, and it was time for my mother and sister to come, and I met them at the bus to go on to Chicago for my brother's wedding and the World's Fair. And I think it was cheaper for my mother to buy me a round trip ticket from Sioux City than for me to get a ticket from Ames. And the round trip ticket to Chicago was $10.
Hmm.
So anyhow, we went to the wedding, and then my sister-in-law's sister working at the fair, so she, got special tickets or what have you. I mean, it didn't cost much, so we went to the fair several days and stayed, of course, at daughter-in-law's home for several days. And then, of course, went back to Sioux City. Well, then I worked. My mother was working for, it was really a man and his sister that lived in a big house. And they were, she was working for them. That's probably why she didn't come to my graduation. But they went someplace for the summer, but they wanted my mother to stay in the house, take care of it while they were gone. So when we got back, I went there with my mother, and then a couple doors down the street, lady wanted to know if I wanted to work there and help taking care of the children and helping. And so I worked there until it was time to go off to teach. So, of course, I made some applications before I left Ames, and I made, can't remember how I got in my personal application, but I did make some. Anyhow, I got a job, which was wonderful then. So many were going out and just never got a job. And most of them, 4-year graduate, went out to teach, were getting $50 a month. And that was just for 9 months. And that was it. Well, I was off $80 a month. And that was good,
Mm-hmm.
So I got this job at this little town of Williams. And I coached basketball, which I enjoyed. And of course, then I had home ec classes, and then I had a science class or something else, but a small enough school, you knew all the teachers, and you knew so many of the kids and the families and all, so I really enjoyed that a lot more than teaching like in a city school in Waterloo. You don't know the families, and you don't know all the teachers, and it's just, they're just not the same. But anyhow, they wanted to change things the next year, so I had a job again. So, anyhow, I was offered a job way down in southwestern Iowa, down in Milwaukee. Well, I know I made the application in because I had met Elmo not long after I started teaching in Williams. I stayed in the same house as another teacher, and she was going with a fellow from Williams, that was a friend of Elmo's. About the first week I was there, they had a dance for the band or something, and I guess it was the superintendent who was talking about this. You don't dance with anybody you're not properly introduced to, and it's you must be so careful. So I was scared to death to dance with anyone unless, of course, this teacher that lives the same place, she'd been there a long time, so she introduced me to people, but if she wasn't there to introduce me, I didn't dare dance with anybody. It was kind of strange. So anyhow, I guess I met Elmo then, but of course never thought anything about it because I kind of was interested in the fellow that I'd had at school, but anyhow, he didn't finish school and I did, and he was from the south and he went back south, so that kind of wore out. But anyhow, the four of us started going together. But we always came in early. We'd go to the show, over in Cedar or Webster City or Iowa Falls, one or the other. So that was the main thing we did. Once in a while, we maybe played cards, some group of town people, or occasionally a dance. They had a big hall over near Iowa Falls, where some of the big name bands came. Boy, that was great.
Mm.
So, anyhow, but then I used Elmo's car to make applications. I went way down there to this new market. And they offered me a contract. Well, then I got an offer from Earlham, which was close to Des Moines, and it was better. So I took it. And I enjoyed my year there. Just another 1 year, I guess. Anyhow, he had a real good superintendent, and he really had, the kids were under control. You didn't have a sign of any discipline problem or anything, everything just went like clockwork. Then I was offered a job at Spirit Lake, which I was offered. Of course, I think I probably got $100 at the Berlin. And then I was offered a job at Spirit Lake, I think $120. So, boy, that was a lot, in that day. So then I resigned from Berlin and went to Spirit Lake. So, and of course, they all frowned on married teachers at that time. It just was about unheard of.
Really.
But still, the superintendent Williams, his wife taught in the school there, But anyhow, but when I applied at Spirit Lake, they, asked if you intended to get married. Ever intended to get married? Well, I wasn't planning on getting married then. I didn't know when, because I was still going, going with him, but heavens, nobody had any money, and we didn't really plan what you could do. So anyhow, after 2 years, we wanted to get married. So I said, well, okay. So then, of course, I didn't teach, because married woman, I was just out until I started substituting in Des Moines, in Waterloo. But that got to be a racket. They didn't pay too good for substitutes then, and I was just called for everything under the sun. Boys shop, or chemistry, or Spanish, or everything you could think of. But it seemed like I got kind of stuck in a special education a number of times. And that was kind of new at the time, and they needed people in it. Well, I had substituted so much that the supervisor in that, she said, well, why didn't I go over to Cedar Falls to the college and take enough courses to renew my certificate, and also to qualify first class for special education. And I got some kind of a grant then that paid for my books and the tuition. So I did that, and then at that time, special education teachers got a bonus of extra $1,000 a year or something like, and there was the openings in that, so then as soon as I started taking, I had a substitute certificate, because I let my regular one run out. But on the substitute certificate, you could only stay one school no longer than one semester on that certificate, So I had substituted for a semester at East High School. And then that's taught me into going to take. The reason I went to East High School, they had hired a young teacher with special education. And that fall, it was kind of a riot school, where the kids really went wild.
What year? When was that?
But,
About when was that?
oh, well, that would have been I suppose one of the 50s or something, or maybe a little, I don't know, yeah, somewhere in there. But anyhow, I think I've gone all right with high school kids. They were on this program. They worked someplace half a day, and then they came to school half a day. So you had two different groups during the day. But then, I had to. Well, I started out going to summer school where I got my first, and I hadn't been to school for so long. I thought, oh, I'll never make it. All younger kids, at school. Of course, summer school, there's more older ones come back, for extra work and all. So anyhow, I went over, registered, and a lot of my credits that I had earned at Ames would apply to special education, a lot of psychology courses and child care and a lot of things. So I didn't have to take a lot of courses to renew my certificate and also qualify for special ed. So anyhow, I went that summer. And I read and I studied and I read and I studied, and I got all A's that summer. Whenever I took about 3 courses, I guess, whatever. So I thought, well, I guess my old brain was still didn't know for sure. So then I could go back in the fall, to teach. And then as long as I was taking courses, I could teach the whole year. As long as I was working on, getting it. So anyhow, I started going over after school, the classes. And then I still had classes to go to the next year. And I was going, of course that was then in the 60s, but I was, Elmo had taken early retirement because it was just too much for him going up and down the stairs at Sears and all with his legs, so anyhow, he was home. So I, didn't mind coming home at night from school or Cedar Falls. But then, in 1970, he passed away right before. No, he was not getting mixed up. November, I think, Friday the 13th, which, when he died. And I was going to night classes then, and I was driving myself, after school. And my class didn't start till 7 o'clock, I think, 7 till 10, at night. Well, of course, by the time I got out of school, I didn't have a lot of time. I think school ran at least till 4 o'clock then. And so, anyhow, I was teaching and going over there at night and, trying to keep up schoolwork and trying to keep up the courses I was taking. But when Elmo was home, it was a big help because he liked to cook, and he'd always have hot supper ready. And he was there when I come home, late. But then he passed away suddenly. I knew I had to keep going. I couldn't give up because I needed the money. So I took 1 week off. And I went back to school and went back to college. And I think the first evening I went back, got some kind of a quiz or exam or something, but I lived through it. But that was really the worst thing. Going over there, wasn't so bad, but driving home at night alone, after 10 o'clock in the winter, and we had kind of a bad winter that year. In fact, sometimes they let us out early from our class because the weather was so bad. And I had to make it home by myself. It was rough, but I got through it. So, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I really think I've lived through a good time in so many ways. We didn't have all this crime and drugs and all those kind of things to contend with. Never thought of even locking our doors ever, or worry about going out at night, or so many things that. Of course, we didn't have material things but we were happy without. Of course, we didn't even know about television, for a long time. We started hearing about it, but then it didn't bother us, but we didn't have it. We thought radios were grand. But when I went to Ames, you weren't supposed to have a radio in your room. You couldn't have, you couldn't have a corn popper. You couldn't have anything. And if you were caught smoking, you were sent right home. It was so different. And the boys, they didn't get any farther than the lounge inside the front door. So that was different. And we had, hours that we were supposed to be in, and hours that the lights were supposed to be off, especially in the freshman dorm. So when I was at that cooperative dormitory, we had a house mother, and she was just grand. And of course, she supervised the meal preparation too, and they always had a committee. They had one committee that you'd have to go in early, and get breakfast ready, and then you partially prepare for noon meal because, most kids had classes, didn't have a lot of time at noon. And then there was the second committee coming at 4 o'clock to prepare the evening meal and what have you, because that was usually, a bigger meal. But I think we were about 100 in that dormitory.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Washed all the dishes by hand. And didn't have a lot of pre-prepared food by any means to fix, Peel potatoes and maybe have a big roast put in the oven or whatever, it's things that took time to do, not like now. They have so many wholesale things and frozen them and what have you, canned and what have you, that get a big meal without a lot of work. But it was a real good experience, it really was, for going out, as I say, and taking charge of these smaller schools, like the home ec department, if they wanted any kind of banquet or anything, why, we prepared food for them and served sometimes. But I was only at that dormitory for a little while. And they chose, people, there was always somebody that was head of the committee for these and helped plan the menus and what have you. I think we did it for a period of 6 weeks. At the beginning of the second 6 weeks I was there, I was chairman of our committee, and that happened. Maybe I just went into that dormitory after I went, or when I went back to school in the spring, because I know it was spring when I was in charge of our committee. Well, that's when this big Visha was on, for a big weekend where the college has all kinds of exhibits and parades and, 3-4 day weekend with putting the college on exhibition, you might say. And I remember going down to the kitchen at 4 o'clock, to start getting the meal ready, and nobody showed up. None of the committee showed up till I don't remember what time. But I whatever it was, meat, I guess I got it started. Finally, when they came, I really had to rush to get the meal ready. Well, we had this good house mother, and we did have a popcorn popper, and I could smell popcorn all over. But she didn't pay attention. And I think we got in after hours sometimes. It wasn't too hard to do either. She was good hearted. But at that family reunion, I learned more about my mother and her, family than I ever knew. My mother wasn't one to talk about anything. Well, I guess on the farm you're just too busy. You didn't have time to. And we, had a lot of company when the grown-ups, they played cards and visited together, and I don't know, it just seemed like we never. And when I went to this reunion, I learned that there was only, six children in my mother's family. And well, anyhow, they lived in South Dakota when they first came to this country. And the one, I suppose maybe she was the oldest one. Anyhow, she went out to work. She'd go to different places and stay to do sewing for the family. And she went to a family that had tuberculosis, and she caught it, and of course, when she died, then young, Well, of course, they went to country school, and, well, then the mother died. My grandmother, she died when there was still, some of the children were quite young, so she's buried in South Dakota. But anyhow, they went to this country school, and at the reunions, the one, I suppose she was probably the youngest of the girls. There was just one boy, but anyhow, she was the youngest, I guess. And she graduated from 8th grade, and she was the only one that got that far. Because the older ones had to stay home and take care of the younger children. Or they took turns, I guess, going to school or staying home and taking care of the younger children and a lot of housework stuff to do at that. When you did everything at home. But I never would have would have guessed. I don't know how many grades my mother went through, but I mean she could read and do all kinds of things. I never even given it a thought. That, and she could, she belonged to a women's study club, and she could write up papers to give, programs, and so I'd say she kind of educated herself. I don't know about my dad, of course. He was just school age. I suppose he probably had started school in Denmark. Anyhow, he went to, like a little country school. He probably got to finish the 8th grade, I really don't know. But then he kind of educated himself too, because he got to be engineer at the high school. And he went to Sioux City, I guess, to find work. And I remember he had a whole big set of books that were about engineering, or about, I suppose, taking care of big boilers, whatever kind of heating they had in the high school. But you think that, like, his father died in Denmark of typhoid fever, and that mother came to this country with all those children. I just thought, America was a wonderful opportunity to what, they had in their home countries then, I guess. I don't know how long it took them, of course, to come by boat. It's a long, long journey, and I suppose they didn't have any special accommodations, just lucky that they had got a place to sleep and something to eat, I guess, on the way. But my dad, of course, never talked about things either. But, of course, some of my cousins, they, in more recent, after they were grown and married and all, I went back to Denmark. This one, well, her husband went more than she did, because he had family still in Denmark, and so he went back a number of times by himself, and he brought a lot of young Danish men over to this country. Well, he sponsored them. Guaranteed that they would have a place to come to and would help to find work. So there was a big piece in the Des Moines Register one time about him sponsoring so many people, to come to this country and all. And of course he farmed, but he got into raising beef cattle, a lot of cattle and selling them, and he made good money. And then he inherited money from his family in Denmark, but he couldn't bring it to this country, only very little. So when he went over there, well, then he could spend money that he inherited. So they had two girls, and the 4 of them went to Denmark and lived for several months on this money, that he couldn't bring to this country. And then, he brought back so many wonderful things, over the years. The grandfather, clock, some special, he had a collection of pipes that you wouldn't believe, these real fancy. And then, of course, he went to other countries too when he was over there. He had this pipe collection of, beautiful ceramic type statues, just dishes and silver and things you just couldn't believe it. But, and then the other cousins went over too, but So, well then, they had, this cousin that went so many times, they had two daughters, and after the one daughter was married, her husband was sent to Sicily, I think, to work for a while. So then Jenks he went over, I don't remember whether his wife Jen went with them or not, but anyhow, he was over there. And he went to Rome, and he said he even got to have a talk with the Pope. Oh, he got in to talk to the Pope. I don't know. He was smart for being a Catholic, but he had a way about him. He could do most anything that he made up his mind to. And he'd get, acquainted with taxi drivers and what have you, and then they'd tell him or show him, places to go where he got to go down a lot of these catacombs they had, underground and see things that most people traveling would never get to see. He was kind of guy. He lived way up into his 90s. He was always healthy and, but finally he was in a nursing home. Well, of course, his wife died before he did. But I went up to our high school reunion, when he was in the nursing home. I stopped to see him. His mind was pretty good, but he did kind of wandered a little bit. But anyhow. But that trip to Kansas, that was... And that cousin, he had just, of course, some of the others, he was the only boy, So, anyhow, sisters, they were all right at the present time. He's my cousin, not, he's in that generation. My generation, my first cousin. But anyhow, I think he was the only boy in that, generation. But the one I had two first cousins that lived in Michigan. And of course one in Sioux City. Well, we originally had three in Sioux City, but there was just one living at the time of the last family reunion. He wasn't not well enough to come. His two daughters were there, and found out one of them lives in Cedar Rapids, not far from Kurt's.
Oh, really?
And I think the other one lives in Sioux City. But anyhow, this cousin of this beautiful home there, and that was agricultural training and all. He spent a whole year, planning this reunion with the help of the sisters that lived there, close enough they got together. But of course he started out by sending out a questionnaire, did anybody be interested? So then I said something to Kurt, and he says, well, yeah, why don't you send it in? And then they asked whether you prefer Memorial Weekend or in the fall, first part of September.
Labor Day?
Labor Day, I can say Labor Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it just happened that Labor Day weekend seemed to be the best for most of them, which turned out good for me because I was having that sinus trouble there in the spring, and well, I still had it in the fall, but anyhow, I was being treated. So that worked out.
So did you learn what the name of the town in Denmark is that they came from?
No, I really don't know. I still have this one cousin in California that, well, she must be up in her 90s. But she's never married. She lives in a home there, but her mind is, good. I get quite a letter from her at Christmas time. And when your dad was going to go to Copenhagen on a trip, I said, I should have second cousins over there, because this one cousin married a minister. Her father, my dad's brother, lived in California. That's where he raised his family. And I guess he just had one girl and then 2 or 3 boys, whatever it was. But anyhow, this girl married a minister, and they went to Denmark for him to preach and lived all a married life over there. And they had 11 children. And I guess they're all well educated, had good jobs, and some of them lived in Copenhagen. And through this cousin in California, I asked if, she had names and addresses or any of them that your dad could probably say hello to if he had time. So she, and your dad did find one of them by phone and just got to visit a little bit. Of course, he didn't have enough time to meet anyone, but it was interesting that at least, that he, I was I would have been happy, if our trip with Gert had included Scandinavian rather than some of the Scandinavian countries. Not that I didn't enjoy the trip we had, but then, I doubt now that I'd ever go over to Denmark and those areas.
So those people that Dad talked to came to this country and then went back? Is that what you say?
No.
They were there all the time?
Well, you see, my first cousin married and lived over there, and all the children were born there. As far as I know, they all stayed in Denmark.
Oh, okay.
I don't know for certain, but I've never heard of any of them being in this country. Maybe they were here. The mother and 2 of the children and the father were back here visiting at the time I graduated from high school, because they were visiting at our place and came to my high school graduation. And that was something to have people from a foreign country at your high school graduation. That was just unheard of. So, they were, I suppose maybe they visited some other times too. Some of them, or maybe some of the children did when they were older, but I really kind of lost contact because I wasn't near my cousins that knew about them and all. But my grandfather in Denmark, he wrote a lot of poetry, had poetry published.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And this cousin in California has a lot of that, of course, in the Danish language. And she thought possibly she could translate some of them. But to translate poetry, to their language, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, but she's got some of these.
And what do you know? What's his name? Your grandfather?
Christensen.
Christensen.
Yeah.
Oh.
He was, and of course my dad's name was Andrew Christopher Christensen. Like the Christopher would be Christian, Andrew Christian or something like that. But in the Danish, it was pronounced Christopher and spelled with a K. And of course, Christensen was with a C. Well, when we lived there at Newell, there were so many Christensens around. Like there was a lot of people called my dad Chris, But there were other Christians around, and then a lot of people called him AK, you know, because that was different. He was AK Christensen. But never in the world was he called, I never heard anybody call him Andrew. They just, you know, never used that name at all. But then my brother was named Uncle Andrew. And then when your mom married Andrew, I said that name got pretty popular.
Yeah.
Well, now your middle name is
Andrew.
Andrew. That's what I thought.
That's interesting.
So that's really something. So whether you have a Andrew involved, possibly it's hard to tell. Time will tell, but
Yeah.
that's really something. Well, the same way, my mother's name was Marie, you know. Her name was Marie Bertha Christensen. And Marie has moved on down. I'm Dorothy Marie and Janet Marie and Cindy Marie. And well, that goes on any place. It's just kind of, but it just seems to kind of fit for a second name. A lot of names, you know, just don't seem to go together. But then, of course, a lot of times people more or less adopt their middle name. They like it better than their first name, and you hardly know what their first name is. But anyhow, I think my grandmother on my dad's side, I think her name was Dorothea. So I think that's where I got the name Dorothy. Of course, she's buried at Newell. I've been to that cemetery a lot of times, and of course, all the relatives that lived at Newell that passed away, the first cousins and aunts and uncles that I had there, that are buried in the cemetery there.
I guess I was there before, right? We went there. Didn't we? To Newell?
What?
We went to Newell, didn't we? Was I there before? It seems like I recall going. Was it there that? Quite a while ago.
Yeah. I can't remember.
I don't remember for sure either.
Know. I can remember, you know, a long time afterwards of being in Newell and driving out to the farm place where we lived. It's like a, you know, they had improved on. Still the same house, but they had added on extra room for bathroom and modernized it, you know.
So it's still standing? Do you think?
Oh,
That's a long time ago.
places fought under.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's all gone.
Oh.
All those
Yeah.
nice buildings and nice farmyard and trees and the whole works, but those ground space was worth more than, you know, there's not so many people living on farms. The farmers have all taken more big machinery, they have to have more land to cultivate, so a lot of home places that just have been eliminated over the years. Now there are some places that maybe they left the house in an old part or something, depending on, you know, who belongs to it all. And somebody might live there that works in town or something, you know, but no, of course I never saw it after it was all turned out. I don't know whether I want to go back and, I mean, it wouldn't really make any difference, I guess, but the farmyard was really nice. I mean, we had so many trees. We had a whole grove of catalpa trees. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They get long bean-like things on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have pretty flowers. Anyhow, we had a big grove of them on the north, and then we had, you know, along the south, no, the west side of the farm, we had a big grove of trees. I don't know what kind of trees they were, but anyhow, you know, that's good protection from the wind and all. And then we had a huge raspberry patch. used to pick raspberries all day long. Well, had more than my mother can use, so she's sold some raspberries. But when I'd go pick raspberries, that just seemed like that was an awful chore. To pick raspberries all day. But anyhow, we had a nice garden right close to the house. A big barn. And it had a real nice floor in the loft, part. The whole thing was floored. And we used to have barn dances there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because, when the barn was about empty, there might be some hay and straw left that was back in the sides, And, of course, people didn't have babysitters in those days and brought the kids along and got to sleep, lay them down on the hay there or straw, and they could sleep. And parents could dance. I think we used to make coffee in a wash boiler, take down, and everybody'd bring, sandwiches and cake and stuff. And
the musicians would they be there?
Oh, they'd have, I don't know, somebody playing a fiddle or accordion or something. No, probably I was lucky to have one person or two. No name bands or any bigger bands. I guess they couldn't have more fun, but and we didn't have any light. Well, we had these gas settling. I guess I called it that. They had mantles on, and the light was a lot brighter and better than kerosene lantern. Well, we had some of those. So that was, the only light we had. We didn't have electricity, but we had enough of those to make enough light in the barn. And but people allowed to smoke them, but I guess they were just brought up to be super careful around barns, because you really just seemed like you heard of barn fires, unless, it was lightning it might have struck or something. They used to have house dances too, people that had a fair-sized house. Not many people had, wall-to-wall carpeting. They might have a rug, but roll up the rug and move some furniture in the back room, and some of them could make a couple rooms pretty much empty. Set some chairs around the side. Somebody with an accordion or a violin, and there might be a piano, maybe not, but dance and dance. People made their own fun, they didn't have to spend money to have a good time. And kids the same way. We had made a miniature golf set out in the farm yard, of course, made obstacles and what have you. And we had a tennis court marked out one time, had a tennis net. Of course, we always had a riding horse. And of course, there was always work to do on the farm, but then we never felt like we were overworked or didn't have time to have fun. And the Danish church, they had a young people's group, and they had gym classes. That they had this separate building from the church, and it was equipped. They had these, I guess you call them horses, that they fall over to watch, and they had these rings, on ropes, and they had ladders on the side for all different kinds, and they, really worked out. They had a regular exercise program. I don't remember whether they had a girls group or not. I think maybe it was just the men. If there was women, girls, I never went to it. But my brother went. And then they had folk dances. They dressed in costumes, and practice, put on folk dances, different places, and really got when like when Newell celebrated, it's 100 years old or whatever. Of course, it was considered quite a large Danish community, more probably than any other group. So they had folk dances in the street. I went to that. It must have been after he was gone, because I don't remember him going. I stayed with one of my cousins. And, that was the church. It wasn't the set. I thought I was there on this, well, anyhow, I remember probably more about the church, the Danish church. They built a new church after we were gone. And they had money enough to pay for that church before they built it. It's just, good farming territory.
Yeah.
But anyhow, they built the church. I don't think they had the extra building hall built, for social events or Sunday school and what have you. I don't think they built that yet when they had 100-year anniversary of the church. And that's when I went up to that. And they put up a big tent to serve, meal in, and people come from all over, anybody that had been ever connected with the church. They put out a big book, going back, pictures of all the confirmation classes and all different things that took place in the church over the years. It was quite an event, but then they put up this hall for Sunday school and social gatherings and kitchen. Of course, when they had the old church, they had a kitchen and some room in the basement for eating. And then they had that gym hall up where they had gymnastics and all, and that was sort of Sunday school, but then that was torn down too after they tore down the old church. So that's all gone. My one uncle lived just down the street a little ways, and he usually, I think, kind of took care of the church in a lot of ways. I know he always used to ring the church bell before his service, and I don't know whether he did some of the janitor work too or not. He worked, but then he'd probably still do that. But when I was growing up, I didn't appreciate the church at all because they used the Danish language yet. And of course, I couldn't understand it, and so there wasn't much going to Sunday school. I sat through it sometimes, and the folks were in church, and then again I would sit in church with them rather than sit through Sunday school that we couldn't understand. But still, I was confirmed. There was 3 or 4 of us at that time that really didn't understand the Danish language. So the minister, worked special with us in the English language, so we could be confirmed at the same time. But they used to have summer school too, where they taught, Danish language. But it wasn't easy, for us to go to summer school. We lived way out in the country, and you had to get there and home. And so I never went to I suppose I could have learned the language if I'd gone to that, but none of us went to that. But my brother picked up the Danish language because some of these men that this gents brought from Denmark, that were new in this country, one of them, I suppose he was second cousin to my dad or something. There was a little family connection, I guess. Anyhow, he worked for us when my brother was still home. I suppose my brother maybe in high school or something. So of course my brother was helping with chores and on the farm, and then this hired man. So he helped this man learn English, and he learned the Danish language from him, and he got so he could, he could speak it. I don't know whether he ever wrote it, but I know he could speak it and understand it quite well. But I got so I could understand some things and say something and sing a few little songs like they sang. Well, there was a big Christmas program, for the kids, and a huge Christmas tree with candles all over it. And they had big buckets of water around with great big mops with long handles to watch. Never had a fire, and most of their decorations, it was great to use Danish paper flags to decorate and other paper stuff, that ideal tinder for fire, but it never happened, thank goodness. But they danced around the Christmas tree and sang "Nu har vi jul again." Now we have Christmas again. And I learned that song because they'd sing it and sing it, and then the faster they sang, the faster they danced around the Christmas tree. And then one line would go this way, and the next circle would go this way, and now we go the nun day. So that way you turn and go the other way, They had a lot of good times. But now for church where the folks were married is having financial problems. I mean, our congregation has gone down. One reason, they're like they say, like on the north, the church is on the north end of town. It's on the north end of what used to be the main business section. And the town has grown from the other side of town. And this north side, where the church is the beginning of it, because it's right at the end of one of the main downtown streets. You drive down and there's this big church, right in front of you. Just go down that street, because then that's a dead end there. But anyhow, we have quite a large black community, and they're pretty well concentrated on the east side where our church is. It's on beyond, but there are some, not far from our church, but then they consider the north end, that's mainly Negroes. Of course, there's a lot of white people live there too, but then there are not too many Negroes on the west side, like, the river divides east and west. It's really north and south, but it's called the east side and the west side of town. That's the way of course, I suppose maybe it's a little bit of angle, whatever, but anyhow. So, of course, it never used to bother. I mean, there was never any trouble. I guess there's always been some black people there, but then as more came, as years went on, they had bigger families and all, and then the way that things have gone on, there's been so much crime and stuff, and probably, I don't know, there's been more in the Negro sections. I guess some ways maybe it has, other ways not, but anyhow, got the reputation, So, it's been hard to get new people to join. That's one big reason. And then we had a couple, one time, quite a few years ago, we had this one minister that, I think he really thought he was too good for our congregation. I think he just kind of treated everybody like they didn't know anything and he knew it all. He wasn't going to stand at the door and shake people's hands. And I don't know, he was just, Maybe he didn't go to church when he was there.
That's like, have you ever met that minister?
But they finally petitioned him, you know, and he,
You want some more?
well, yeah, left, but he had done a lot of damage while he was there because a lot of people left the church on account of him. So that kind of cut down, and then, you know, we went getting a lot of new members. Well, then we had this couple that, well, it's just been, 2 years ago that they were there for, well, I think they were there about 7 years. But during their stay, that's what it wasn't entirely their doing, but they come up with the idea, you know, there's always trying to push to work with the blacks and have a relationship with the blacks. So they spent thousands of dollars, I think, printing great big thick things about how they were going to do things and all. And over a 10-year period, they were going to gradually work towards turning the church over to the Negroes group, black people. They don't like Negroes. But anyhow, when they got going on that, then the more people left the church. They weren't going to stay if they were going to turn it over to the Negroes. Well, it started out, a few blacks came and ministers tried to work with them and making all these plans. And at first the Negro group, well, we'd have to share, the building with them. And they'd have their service like, I suppose, whatever time they chose, and we could have ours whenever they didn't want it. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, that was just the idea. And a few blacks came to church, which was all right, but they never got any big group to come.
Yeah.
But a lot of people left because they thought the blacks were going to take over. Well, when they got to the point where they really thought, the blacks would start coming, they didn't want to come. They didn't want to take over our church. Mm-hmm. So that hurt our numbers, which, crazy. Yeah, it looked like the water's boiling. Well, let it be. Maybe trouble is, the church is way too big for the number of people we got. We can't support it financially. I don't know. It just costs an enormous amount to heat that building, and we don't need all that room. And they got this big pipe organ that's really wonderful, but people aren't building churches big enough to use a big pipe organ like that. So I don't know what's going to happen. They're debating about He got all kinds of ideas. Of course, there are several other Methodist churches that probably aren't faring extra well, and some of the upper-ups, they got the idea, oh yeah, all these churches should go together and build a new church out away from all the old ones and out on the edge of the west side. So what's going to happen, I don't know, but something's going to have to happen because we just can't support that big building anymore. And yet, you know, you've had these friends for so many years. They hate to break up, but I don't know that I doubt that they would ever agree for the whole church membership, for the majority of them would move to the same church, you know, that's already there. So what's going to happen, I don't know. At least, I guess keep working along for maybe another year to come to a final conclusion of what they're going to do. Of course, there's a Methodist church not far from me, just, you know, I could even walk to it. So, if they break up, well, that'd be the logical place for me to go, but who knows?
Well, Lisa's been going to the Catholic church.
Oh,
you know, well, she was raised a strict Catholic.
Oh, why she really?
She went to
I wondered.
school, you know, Catholic school. Some really, I think that she said the order of nuns that ran the school are just like, were so strict they went out of existence because nobody would be that strict, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, there aren't so many nuns anymore now. I mean, all the Catholic schools, they have more, they don't have very many nuns teaching anymore.
Yeah. But where she went, I guess it was really, in Washington, D.C., you know, there was just like enough people concentrated there that they could support that rule.
Yeah, of course, we had a Catholic high school in Waterloo and a couple of Catholic grade schools, I guess. Of course, we had a Lutheran high school too, and no, not Lutheran. That's, you know, Walnut Ridge. Maybe it's, I don't know, no, you can't say now. If you go to Lutheran or Baptist, it seems to me like it's Lutheran. Maybe it's Baptist. I know we got a Lutheran grade school, Presbyterian church, I believe, and I know we went down several times and went with Janet to the Methodist church. Well, I guess maybe the Presbyterians had a more active young people's group that had, you know, evening meetings and all. And so Janet went with her roommate to, I guess, some of those. But I think your dad first went out with Janet's roommate.
No.
And then we brought her home. I think it was maybe there at the apartment where he first met Janet. I don't know, maybe she didn't go to the Presbyterian any time until after she met him. But anyhow, I guess he decided, thought maybe he'd like Janet better than this other gal. So, that's the way it started.
I've gotten to be friends with the Presbyterian minister in town, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have their service on our channel.
Oh, huh.
So I help them out sometimes, or,
Yeah.
you know, just have dealings with them. And his name is Fisher.
Oh, yeah.
And it turns out that he's from Iowa.
Oh.
But I always wondered, you know, if there's any, I don't know, it's probably a common name.
Yeah. I doubt. Of course, it could be maybe way back in the families, but I don't think there's any Fishers
That
I
is
know
interesting.
connected Yeah, now. But now, do you think, how about Lisa's folks? Do they go to Catholic church, right?
Well, her mom does, but not her dad.
Oh.
So.
So you really don't know whether, I mean, like your children, would she insist that they go to Catholic? You haven't?
I don't think that, I don't know, you know. I don't know.
She said, just mentioned something about, baptism was nice. Well, of course, I don't think it's a whole lot different than.
Yeah, she'll probably want to get baptized Catholic or
Yeah,
something.
of course, the Catholics are a lot, I mean, they've changed a lot over the years. I mean, they're not so strict about so many things as they used to be. In fact, I've known weddings where